Good evening, America. Tonight, we're diving into a story that could reshape the political conversation in Washington. Fresh court documents from the long-running Epstein investigation are now public, and they raise new questions about how far the reach of power and protection really went. For years, whispers, sealed filings, and unanswered questions hung over this case. But now, for the first time, portions of those files are open, and the picture they paint is disturbing. It's not just about one man's crimes. It's about an entire network of influence that touched politics, business, and entertainment. What's emerging isn't a tabloid headline. It's a look at how systems of privilege shielded the powerful while silencing the vulnerable. And yes, some of the names surfacing again belong to people we all recognize, figures who've stood on podiums, run for office, and shaped American policy. That's what makes these revelations so politically explosive. This moment isn't about partisan spin. It's about accountability and whether those in positions of power are ever truly held to the same standard as everyone else. As the documents continue to be analyzed, President Donald Trump's past social connections to Epstein are once again under scrutiny, part of a larger discussion about who enabled, ignored, or benefited from proximity to wealth and access. What's notable now is the political silence surrounding it. A figure once known for constant media engagement is staying largely out of sight while his team navigates a storm of legal and political pressures. Across Washington, allies are choosing their words carefully. Critics are calling for transparency, and journalists are digging through every page of these unsealed files, searching for clarity in a case long defined by secrecy. But this story isn't just about individuals. It's about a pattern of power protecting itself. It's about institutions that looked away, documents that vanished, and witnesses who changed their stories. For the victims who spent years fighting to be heard, these new disclosures mark a turning point. Their accounts, once buried under legal barriers, are finally part of the public record. And for America, this is another test, a test of whether truth still matters when it comes to the rich, the famous, and the politically untouchable. It's all there. And once you start connecting the dots, you see the same small circle of influence circling the same predator, decade after decade. This isn't just about scandal. It's about the machinery of power itself. How many doors were opened because of a donation? How many investigations were stalled because a phone call was made from the right person at the right time? The unsealed files pull back that curtain, exposing the quiet favors, the soft threats, and the hush money that kept this world spinning. And now, with the sunlight finally breaking through, that world is beginning to crumble. And then there's Trump, the man who made a career out of claiming he knew everyone worth knowing. Suddenly, that confidence looks less like charm and more like liability. These documents don't claim guilt, but they do claim proximity. And proximity in this case is damning enough. We're talking about flight manifests, visitor logs, and recorded statements that all weave together a picture of familiarity, not coincidence. And in politics, perception can be as destructive as proof. Which is why, as these files circulate through newsrooms and legal offices tonight, the Trump camp has gone conspicuously silent. Not the usual barrage of denials, not the angry tweets, just silence. It's the silence that speaks volumes. Because when truth starts leaking from the walls, silence is the only defense left. For years, every time this story edged closer to the truth, something happened to stop it. A case dismissed, a file sealed, a witness discredited. But this time, it's different. The dam has cracked and evidence is flowing freely. Investigators are examining timelines, prosecutors are reviewing prior statements, and the victims, the real heart of this story, are finally being heard again. You can almost feel the panic rising among the powerful. The same names that once glided effortlessly through the corridors of privilege are now finding themselves cornered by facts they can't spin away. The very system that once insulated them is now exposing them. And that's the real story tonight. Accountability finally catching up to arrogance. Because here's the truth we keep learning. Again and again, secrecy protects power, but transparency destroys it. These unsealed files aren't just about Jeffrey Epstein. They're about a network, a culture of complicity that believed it was untouchable. And if the evidence we're seeing tonight continues to hold up under scrutiny, that culture is about to face a reckoning it has evaded for decades. This is no longer a whispered rumor behind closed doors. It's in the open now. And as uncomfortable as that is for some, for the victims, and for justice, it's a moment long overdue. Something strange is happening tonight, something that doesn't fit the usual Trump pattern. The man who has built an entire political identity around constant visibility, constant outrage, and constant noise has suddenly gone quiet. No rally stages, no late-night posts, no grand declarations of witch hunts or fake news. Just silence. And that silence, in the context of what's unfolding right now, might be the loudest thing of all. Let's take a moment to recognize how rare this is. Donald Trump does not go silent. For years, he has operated like a perpetual motion machine of media. Every insult, every headline, every scandal feeding into the next. He thrives on chaos. He uses attention as armor. But this time, after the unsealing of new Epstein evidence that connects threads the public wasn't supposed to see, that energy has vanished. And for those who've watched him for years, that's not just odd, it's alarming. Behind the scenes, reports are surfacing of a bunker mentality inside Trump's inner circle. Advisors are described as anxious, unreachable, frozen. There are whispers that lawyers have told him to lay low, not to comment, not to appear, and not to risk a single word that could tie him to what's being uncovered. For a man who measures his power by his presence, that's not strategy. It's survival mode. It's the political equivalent of pulling the shades and locking the doors. And here's where it gets interesting. In the days before the Epstein documents were unsealed, Trump was his usual self. Bold, loud, defiant. He was attacking prosecutors, insulting rivals, and teasing another rally tour. Then, almost overnight, the tone shifted. Planned appearances were postponed, media bookings were canceled, his online activity dropped to a whisper. For a figure whose very brand is omnipresence, that kind of vanishing act doesn't just happen by accident. Something triggered it, something real. It's not the first time Trump has tried to dodge a storm. When the Mueller report neared release, he claimed victory before reading a single page. When the classified documents case broke, he called it a setup. But what makes this moment different is that the Epstein revelations cut deeper. They hit at character, morality, and connections that can't be brushed off as political. These aren't partisan accusations. They're questions about behavior, association, and the misuse of privilege. And Trump's response, or rather his non-response, speaks volumes. We've seen this pattern before, but rarely from Trump himself. It's a classic crisis play. Disappear, let the news cycle burn itself out, and re-emerge later with a new distraction.
The problem this time is that the story isn't fading, it's expanding. Every hour brings a new name, a new document, a new revelation. The spotlight he once used to control the narrative is now fixed on him in a way that can't be redirected. Some of Donald Trump's most vocal allies have gone quiet, not because their views have suddenly changed, but because no one knows what comes next. They've seen this movie before, how a controversy around Trump can expand overnight, turning loyalty into liability. And this time, the stakes feel higher than ever. In politics, silence speaks volumes. When a figure as dominant as Trump disappears from the public stage, speculation fills the void. Is it strategy, legal caution, or is this the rare moment when even Trump recognizes that words could make things worse? Whatever the reason, one thing is clear. The man who once thrived on attention now seems to be suffocating in its absence. Every appearance, every word now carries risk. One wrong comment could trigger a chain reaction in the press or in ongoing investigations. So, for now, he's retreating. And that retreat, for a man defined by confrontation, looks like something close to fear. But here's the irony. Trump's silence may be fueling the story more than his words ever could. When he talks, he shapes the narrative. When he doesn't, the narrative shapes him. Each missed rally, each canceled appearance, each unanswered question leaves space for new theories. And that vacuum is being filled quickly. The Trump operation, usually a machine of nonstop messaging, has slowed to a whisper. That's not business as usual. That's full-scale damage control. And behind the scenes, the calculation is intense. Every ally, every advisor, every lawyer is measuring risk, because one phrase out of place could shift the story from speculation to evidence. For someone whose brand has always been built on defiance, this sudden restraint signals something deeper: vulnerability. Washington can sense it. Power in this town moves like water. It flows away from weakness. And right now, that current is shifting. Inside the Republican Party, the once solid wall of loyalty is showing cracks. Lawmakers who built their careers defending Trump are hesitating. Donors are asking questions they didn't dare ask before. The phrase, "no comment at this time," has become the new talking point. That's not discipline, that's fear. Behind closed doors, campaign strategists are quietly gaming out what a post-Trump future might look like. Some conservative outlets are already testing new editorial tones, moving from total defense to cautious distance. When even friendly media begins to insert, "let's wait for the facts," it means the tide is turning. We've seen moments like this before. After January 6th, during the classified documents probe, during countless investigations that promised to end the Trump era but didn't. But this moment feels different. It's not about polling or political momentum. It's about reputation, risk, and the realization that no one in Washington wants to be the last person standing next to a political firestorm. For years, Trump's greatest strength was his ability to command loyalty through power, to make people believe that sticking with him meant survival. But now, that equation is flipping. Staying too close might carry more danger than distance. And as donors redirect their money, as candidates quietly remove old photos and endorsements, and as staffers start to speak off the record, a new reality is settling in. Washington's loyalty has limits. The story isn't over. But for the first time in a long time, Donald Trump isn't setting the agenda. The silence around him is. It's the same pattern we've seen in politics, in media, in business. Different names, same system. But this time, the cracks are too wide to patch. When history looks back on this moment, it won't just ask what Epstein did. It will ask how so many powerful people let him do it. It will ask why the media ignored the victims for years, why prosecutors gave sweetheart deals, why public outrage only came when it was too late. It will ask why the people in charge of truth were so afraid of telling it. Because power and secrecy aren't just linked, they're dependent on each other. And that's the threat unraveling tonight. When you strip away the secrecy, power loses its illusion. Suddenly, the people who seemed invincible look desperate. The people who once laughed off accusations now hire crisis managers. The same institutions that turned away are issuing internal investigations. It's almost poetic. The empire built on silence, now destroyed by the sound of its own exposure. The question that remains is whether accountability will finally reach the top. Because for once, the evidence doesn't stop at the lower rungs. It stretches upward into boardrooms, campaign offices, even government desks. The names being whispered now are the ones who once thought they could never be whispered at all. And maybe that's the lesson in all this, that the higher you climb, the louder the fall becomes when the truth catches up. Every secret has a lifespan. Every lie, no matter how carefully built, eventually runs out of air. And as we watch these revelations unfold, we're witnessing the slow but unstoppable collapse of a system that thought it could bury its sins forever. The walls are breaking, the truth is seeping through, and the era of silence finally may be ending. So here's where we are tonight. The walls are closing in, the truth is emerging, and Donald Trump, once the most visible man in America, is now running from his own shadow. The Epstein story has always been about power, corruption, and the price of silence. But maybe, just maybe this time, the silence is finally breaking. And if that happens, everything changes.